Hey guys, welcome to Bastion Time. I'm your host Bastion. This is This Week in Nintendo News. Let's get to that news. Now, first of all, the biggest story, of course, is the fact that, as we all suspected, the SNES Classic Edition is a thing. It's coming out for this holiday season. I think it's specifically October that it comes out, and yeah, we all knew it was coming, let's be real here, but it's nice to know for sure, and of course we didn't know exactly what the game lineup would be, so now we know, and one of those games has never been played, at least officially, ever. Not even just in Japan, outside of Japan or whatever, but ever, and that's Star Fox 2. Of course, if you're not familiar with this, there was Star Fox for the Super Nintendo, or Super Famicom or whatever, and then a Star Fox 2 was made and was completed, but for some insane reason, Nintendo said, let's just make a Star Fox game for the Nintendo 64, which is about to come out. We won't bother with Star Fox 2. So, anyways, now it's ready for people to play it. You will have to finish the first stage in Star Fox 1 in order to play Star Fox 2 to unlock it, but that's amazing. I cannot believe, after all of these years, we're finally going to get a chance to play that game. That's worth it alone. Of course, Nintendo is aware that the NES Classic Edition sold so frickin' well that they didn't have an opportunity to provide enough units to everybody who wanted to buy one. They say, not to worry, we're definitely producing more units for the SNES. We learned our lesson, but pre-orders, there are no pre-orders currently available as far as I'm aware in the US, but in European countries, pre-orders have been available and they've already sold. So, and the thing is not released until October. So, this is a scary issue. It seems like Nintendo's going to be hearing from upset fans once again regarding this issue. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. Maybe because of this, they will then be able to somehow produce more than they had intended to. Our next story is very interesting. It comes from this developer who was working on or was somehow involved or aware of a project, a pet project, that Mr. Miyamoto was working on for the DS, and he says that it got to like 90% completion and then was cancelled. What? How is this possible? Mr. Miyamoto is just 10% away from completing some game for the DS and is cancelled? That's so weird. If you want to read more about that, there's a link down there for you. Our next story is just a rumor, but it's about some features that someone claims they have knowledge about coming to the Switch. Things like a guest account, which would be pretty awesome because as it is, you have to create a brand new account in order to play a game because some games only allow for one save file under your account, so you can't just let somebody delete your save file and start fresh or whatever. Also, the ability to share or transfer a save file supposedly is coming, so that could be pretty cool. Our next story is about Merchoid, which is a pretty awesome accessories or shirts developer. I don't know. Anyways, they develop a lot of cool things like really cool shirts or backpacks, or in my case I bought a Zelda leather jacket from them for way too much money, but whatever, especially considering I barely ever wear it, especially not in the summertime. But anyways, I digress. Now their next thing that they've developed is from Breath of the Wild, and it is a bow and arrow set. So of course the arrows are like suction cup style, so you don't accidentally kill anybody, but now you can set up your Guardian amiibo and shoot some arrows at it, I guess. If you want to read more about that, or heck, even buy it, there is a link down there for you. So an analyst has come forward and reported that they expect that Switch unit availability will continue to be a problem. Nintendo at E3 has said, oh, we're totally aware of this problem, we're working on fixing it, but this analyst says that's not even possible. Apparently there are not enough components that, the Nintendo doesn't make all of the components of the Switch, of course. They have a completely separate third-party assemblage company build it, but then even they have to get their chips and such from other third parties, and apparently there just simply aren't enough components to build very many Switches, because other companies need them as well. Microsoft and Apple and PlayStation, Sony, that's what they call it. Anyways, it's going to continue to be an issue because all these other developing companies need their stuff built too, so the Switch is going to continue to be having shortages. So I read an interesting article from Koichi Ishii, who I love and idolize because he is the creator of the Mana series, which, if you didn't know, is my second favorite franchise of all time. Zelda, of course, is first. But I think the reason why I loved Mana so much when I first played it, the first Mana game, of course, I ever played was Secret of Mana, and the reason why I loved it so much is because it was like playing multiplayer Zelda before that was even a thing. We had no 4 swords back then in the Super Nintendo era, so this was amazing. It was an action-adventure, multiplayer experience, it was so cool, and then I went on to play every other Mana game that I could legally get my hands on, and one that I could not legally get my hands on, but we don't have to talk about that. But anyways, the point is, I love me some Mana. So when I heard that he left Square Enix and the Mana series to found his own company, which meant that he could no longer be in charge of the Mana series, unfortunately, but he did start development during the Wii era on a game that never completed. Well, I think it did get completed, but it was nothing like the original intention. The original intention was much more Mana-like, and this was not that, let's say. And it never came out outside of Japan. Anyways, after that, Nintendo basically hired his development company to then create the Ocarina of Time 3D and Majora's Mask 3D. In case you didn't know, Zelda team did not work on that. They had nothing to do with that really at all. Eiji Aonuma oversaw it, sort of, kind of, but he didn't really have to do anything because Koichi Ishii's team just recreated Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask in 3D for the 3DS. So then, after that, you'd think, well, their next game is surely going to be very Zelda-like. And sure enough, they announced their next game was called Ever Oasis. You might have heard of it. And I was so super stoked for it until I saw a trailer, in which case I learned it really isn't that Zelda-like. In this interview that I have a link to, he goes on to talk about how he feels like Zelda really influenced it, but it doesn't look very Zelda-like to me. It's basically a building a village simulator. And sure, there are dungeons, and there's kind of like an overworld, but it's all in a desert. I don't know. What I loved about the Mana games is that they were vast, they had so many different types of landscapes like Zelda. There was a desert, there was foresty stuff, there was rolling plains, there were, it's just everything imaginable. And Ever Oasis is just in a desert, and that's it. That's so boring to me. It's like I Am Setsuna. Originally, I was super excited for that game until I found out the entire overworld is just one little snowy area. That's not what I play action RPGs for. I want to explore a vast world, not one little area. Also why I wasn't so super into Final Fantasy Explorers for the 3DS like I thought I would be, because it turns out it's just completely self-contained in one little tiny area. And these games are meant to have vast worlds for you to explore, so pretty frustrating. I'm not so super stoked for Ever Oasis. There is a demo, and I played the demo, and it still didn't quite get me excited. So I don't think I'm buying it, which is sad because I was really looking forward to it. I thought Koichi Ishii is going to build an amazing game after having worked on these 2 classic Zelda remakes, and oh well. But anyways, if you want to read the interview, there's a link down there for you. And actually, there's another bit of info that I don't know if it was from the same interview or a different interview, but the gameplay style in that is you're a party of 3, and that might sound familiar to many Mana fans out there, but instead of multiplayer, it's just single player. And an interviewer said, hey, you created Secret of Mana, which is famous for having a party of 3, and also the sequel to Secret of Mana, which would have been called Second Densetsu 3 in Japan, but over here probably would have been called Secret of Mana 2. Anyways, that's a whole different kettle of fish. The point is, in those games, you could play 3-player multiplayer, and that was so amazing and revolutionary at the time. And so here in Ever Oasis, you are limited to a party of 3, so why the heck can you only play solo? You can't have other people wirelessly connect to you, or even a cable connecting to you, to play those other two characters. Why is that? This interviewer asked, especially considering it seems obvious that that should be the case, that it should be multiplayer. And Koichi Ishii said, well, we didn't have time to really implement that. I wanted to make it multiplayer, and you know what? In the next game that I make, I'll make sure it's multiplayer, but in this instance, we just didn't have time to make it multiplayer, so you, the single player, get to play all of 3 of these characters, which, I get it, but it doesn't quite cut it for me. That's not a good enough reason. Why not then extend your development time to implement multiplayer? Because it's not cost effective or whatever the heck the reason is, but that's just not a good enough reason to me. I mean, I idolize this guy, Koichi Ishii, but he's been making some decisions lately that have just been really frustrating, which is why I'm kind of excited about the fact that somebody completely different is now in charge of the Mana series over at Square Enix, and maybe they will, as strange as this sounds, be more true to Mana's origins than even the father of Mana was. But anyways, I'm babbling about a topic that probably not a lot of you care about, which is Mana. So let's end the video here. There's going to be another video tomorrow or the next day. See you guys then. Bye, guys.